happened. It happened like this, and some of you have heard this before. It happened like this. I'd finished my degree in theology, and I did that at Birmingham Christian College. For a long time, I'd been volunteering time at our local church, our then home church, which was Zion Christian Centre and now Life Central. They weren't ready as a leadership team to take me on as a ministry in training, and that was understandable. I think that happened 12 months later. The actual dates I don't fully remember. During that 12 months, I needed to work. We were a young family at the time. I still like to think that we are, but we're not. That was 20 years ago. My daughter Emily, she was about to be born, and I needed to earn money. Her birth certificate reads, Daniel Bennett, occupation, filing clerk. Filing clerk. And that's a constant reminder to me of the importance of following God's call, even more so submitting to his will, wherever it leads. Filing clerk. What was that all about? There was a solicitor who was in the church family, and they worked for a solicitor's practice. I'll keep the names out of it. And this solicitor's practice had been going for a long time. And during that time, they had this filing system, all on paper. Each matter held within an envelope folder. And these folders, thousands of them were stored in the loft, and they were stored in the cellar. They were in alphabetical order, but it's important to the story that alphabet, due to the volume that was there and the decades that they covered, had been restarted at least 5 times. A to Z, then A to Z again, then A to Z again. For me, I needed to be earning. And my job as a filing clerk was to go and get each folder. I could carry about 5 at a time and then sit at the computer and give each folder a number and type that into an Excel spreadsheet and then open each folder and go through the contents, entering the main details of it. Mostly, almost entirely, each folder contained a house sale and a house purchase. My job as a filing clerk was to build a spreadsheet, folder after folder after folder. For them, for the staff, it gave them a filing system that they could all access. For me, my studies behind me, ministry and training ahead of me, it felt like I've been forgotten. 12 months have been forgotten. My question during that time was, what on earth of value could this have for the kingdom of God? What on earth? And yet God knew what he was doing. As a patience grower, it nearly drove me insane. Nearly, but not quite. As a patience grower, it taught me like no other activity could have done. We're into the 4th talk in this deeper series where we're covering the fruits of the Spirit. So I'll read it to you. This is where we're up to in it. So I'll read it to you out of the book of Galatians. Galatians 5, starting in verse 22. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace. This is where we're up to in it. Patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. We've called this series Deeper because we're never fully going to get to the depth that the Holy Spirit can take us, where the depth of love, the depth of joy, the depth of peace, and so on is the depth that Jesus manifests in his life. And God would want to grow in our lives. And now we come to patience. Patience and patience, like it or not, and often we don't. I didn't. My 12 months as a filing clerk isn't a time that I would want to repeat, but it's a requirement. It's a necessity that features both in the biblical narrative, in the stories and the teaching and the prayers that are recorded, and in our own lives too. I got to tell my story of a time, a patience growing episode in my life. I'm sure for each of you, without much thought, you could tell of a time in your life where patience was necessary. You could be in a time like that now. I'm sure we all are to some extent. Something in our lives that we're waiting on, and we need patience. We need to wait. And with that in mind, let's go to the Bible next. In the talks that I'm doing in this series, and given that the title of the series is deeper, and given that the image of the series is an ocean, that of diving down, I decided that a soaking session would be good in each of the talks. Good for us, good for our faith, good for our souls, reading scriptures and slowing them down in our speaking and in our listening. And I'm starting in the book of Romans, where it says, Romans 12, verse 12. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Share with God's people who are in need. Practice hospitality. And note here that being patient is connected with the word affliction. Affliction, difficulty, challenge, frustration, pain, disappointment, loss. And I'm going to come back to that later. In the book of Galatians, it says, Galatians 6, verse 9, let us not become weary in doing good. For at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. The word patience isn't used there, but when we're doing good, when we're trying not to give up, patience, that's what's needed, to do it over and over again and over the long haul, even if the harvest tarries. And that's a great word, tarry. It's an old-fashioned word, tarry. It means to wait for the harvest, to be patient, but prayerfully patient in an agitating type of way. And it connects into a parable that Jesus told about a persistent widow. That comes in Luke chapter 18, and it's introduced like this, Luke 18, verse 1. Then Jesus told his disciples a parable to show them that they should always pray and not give up. The widow in the story, she wanted justice against her adversary, and the judge, he wasn't interested. But she would not give up, and he finally gives in, saying, even though I don't fear God or care about men, yet because this widow keeps bothering me, I will see that she gets justice, that she won't eventually wear me out with her coming. To tarry, to not give up, to be patient and persistent in prayer and until a harvest comes. In the book of Ephesians, it says, Ephesians 4, verse 2, be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. And it's evident in the different verses out of the different letters that Paul wrote that there's overlap in the fruits of the Spirit. Patience and love, humility and gentleness. One of them can't be deepened in isolation from the others. These are the outworkings of the fruits. Now, if we were to go to the Old Testament and dive into what that has to say about patience, it's the book of Psalms where we're going to enter in. Psalm 37, starting in verse 7. Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. Do not fret when men succeed in their ways, when they carry out their wicked schemes. Wait patiently. That's one reference. And then in Psalm 13, there's a whole psalm with the repeated phrase that cries out and confronts God over the matter of patience. Psalm 13, verses 1 and 2. How long? How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I wrestle with my thoughts and every day have sorrow in my heart? How long will my enemy triumph over me? How long? You can hear the depth of frustration and pain, and it caused me to go searching. I checked how many times that the phrase "how long" is used in the Bible. Apparently, 54 times in the English Standard Version of the Bible. And that's a lot. That's a lot for one phrase. God's people had to learn to wait. They had to learn to be patient. And with Psalm 13, with what the writer was confronted God on, doesn't seem like the right behavior from God. Forgetting, hiding his face, allowing the enemy to triumph. Is that how they really see God? And for God, this is his word. This is his word to us, the Bible. And God allowed this psalm in. God allowed these complaints in. But the writer at the end of the psalm can fall back on who he knows God to be. Psalm 13, verses 5 and 6. But I trust in your unfailing love. My heart rejoices in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord, for he has been good to me. The writer was having a moment of honest, heartfelt prayer. How long? How long? But a moment isn't a lifetime. And the writer knows God to be good, forever good. God can be no different. It's who he is. It's his character. He is good, and it's the reason why we can trust him. Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Songs. Those books in the Bible that are referred to as the books of wisdom. And two more references on patience from these. Both are worth soaking in. Both are life lessons. Proverbs 15, verse 18. A hot-tempered man stirs up dissension, but a patient man calms a quarrel. Ecclesiastes 7, verses 8 and 9. The end of the matter is better than its beginning, and patience is better than pride. Do not be quickly provoked in your spirit, for anger resides in the lap of fools. Then, with the Bible, there's the narrative, the stories themselves, and those standout Bible characters who we look to as examples of what it means to live as God would have us to live. And there was Jacob. Jacob who fell in love and thought he was working 7 years so that he could marry Rachel, but was tricked somehow by her father and ends up with Leah, Rachel's sister. And he had to work another 7 years for who his heart desired. Then there was Joseph, who was wrongfully held in prison in Egypt. His way out, or so he thought, was the interpretation of a dream. But then he was forgotten and left in prison another 2 years. Then there was Moses, who sensed God's calling early in his life to rescue God's people from slavery, but ended up on the far side of the desert looking after sheep for 40 years. And when Moses did eventually rescue God's people, he wandered with them around the same desert for another 40 years when he could have just entered the promised land. And Moses finally died on a mountain looking over the promised land, barred from entering for a single act of disobedience where he lost his patience. There was David who wanted to build the temple for his God, but God told him no. Someone else would do it, his son Solomon. And David, in his waiting, stockpiled everything that would be needed to build that temple. Then there was the break, the silence between the testaments. After the prophetic words of the prophet Malachi, with which the Old Testament closes, Malachi 4, verses 5 and 6, where it says, "See, I will send you the prophet Elijah before that great and dreadful day of the Lord comes. He will turn the hearts of the fathers to their children and the hearts of their children to their fathers, or else I will come and strike the land with a curse." And then there was nothing. About 400 years, nothing. Nothing got added. Nothing was thought to be inspired by God. This is referred to as the intertestamental period, or the silent years. History carried on. History carried on, patiently waiting until there came a man. This is in John 1, verse 6. There came a man who was sent from God. His name was John. He came as a witness to testify. John the Baptist, the forerunner to Jesus the Christ. And if you are willing to accept it, this is Matthew 11, verse 14. If you're willing to accept it, he is the Elijah. John the Baptist was the Elijah who was to come. He who has ears, let him hear. And finally, in this soaking, another parable, another made-up story from Jesus as he speaks into patience. And it's about brothers. Two of them, and a father. And the youngest brother was impatient. He couldn't wait for the father to die. He wanted his inheritance now. And he took what he was given, and he traveled far off, and he wasted it, while the older brother remains in the father's house. The younger brother finally returned penniless, and the father went out running towards him, whereas the older brother turned his back on both of them. Why? The older brother hadn't waited well. The need for patience had twisted him up on the inside. And it's evident throughout the Bible that there are lessons, so many lessons in waiting, so many lessons in patience. And I'm sure you've learnt as many as me, if not more. Just ignore that piece of paper that fell. Here are some of mine. Firstly, in the waiting, in the being patient, keep serving, keep doing the small and working on everything we're able to work on while we've got the time, because life often becomes fuller. Life often becomes more demanding, more intense. And that also means working on relationships, on friendships. These take the most time, the most patience to build. And these friendships, those friends, become godsends when we're facing challenges. Secondly, keep your heart pure. Keep your heart pure. Knowing that in the waiting, knowing that in being patient, it has the power to twist you up on the inside. Even if it looks like we're doing well, even if we're not showing it on the outside. And what helps, I said about friends. I said about having someone listening to you. Someone close. Someone who can listen without judging you. I've got someone like that. And before I start talking to them, I say to them, don't think any less of me as a result of what I'm going to say to you. I just need to talk it out. And I do. I talk it out. And they don't. They don't think any less of me. and I'll reach a better place. Thirdly, patience and affliction are often connected. Patience and affliction are often connected. In Romans 8, from verse 18 onwards, Paul explores this connection, and he starts with Romans 8, verse 18. I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. Paul takes it. He takes it in writing that as a definite. Some form of suffering will come into our lives. It's not if, but when. We're not immune as Christians. In fact, verse 22, we know that the whole creation has been groaning, as in the pains of childbirth, right up to the present time. It's not just us who are waiting. It's not just us who are being patient. It's the whole of creation. And as a result of facing challenge, as a result of facing difficulties, as a result of suffering, our prayers will come out. They will come out as we're waiting, as we're being patient. But sometimes they're so deep, our prayers, that the words can't be formed around them. They are groans. Verses 23 to 25. But we ourselves who have the first fruits of the Spirit groan inwardly as we wait eagerly for our adoption as sons, the redemption of our bodies. For in this hope we were saved. But hope that is seen is no hope at all. Who hopes for what he already has? But if we hope for what we do not yet have, we wait for it patiently. Affliction, suffering. No one asks for it. No one wants to go through it. Often it can't be explained. But what Paul tells us is that the Spirit, verses 26 and 27, the Spirit helps us in our weakness. The Spirit intercedes for us in accordance with God's will. Fourthly, think generationally. How we wait, how we're patient can become the work that God's doing. Can become the work that God's doing, whether that's deepening work within our own life or positioning work of situations and conversations, or whether waiting, being patient, is the work of history itself. Our God is a generational God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's his span. That's his remit. What God sets in motion in one generation sometimes only gets seen several generations later. The thought came to me the other day as I was walking down to Dyson's to do some mentoring. I was reflecting on patience. And I'll leave you with this. It was a challenging thought for me when it came. And I asked myself the question, how patient would I be in any given situation? How patient would I be in any given situation? I realized then that patience sometimes is connected to a value. For example, if I said to you, if you wait, this isn't actually happening, but if I said to you, if you wait, if you're patient, I'll give you £1. Give you £1. How long would you wait? Not long. If I said to you, if you're patient, I'll give you £100. You would wait longer. I'd wait longer. £1,000. Longer still. £10,000 and so on, £100,000. We do the calculation without thinking about it. It doesn't have to be related to money either. If I said to you, just wait, be patient to see someone you see every day, I don't think we'd wait that long. But if it was someone who it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to see them, we'd be very patient. Can you see where this is going? What value do we give to God What value do I give to God? Do I wait long enough? Am I patient enough with him and his plans and his purposes in my life and in the lives of others? Or do we decide that we've got a better idea or we want to get there faster? God's people in the Old Testament, when Moses went off up on a mountain for 40 days, they placed a value on God, the one true God, and decided he wasn't worth the wait. Why be patient when you can cast your own golden calf? What do we value? Who do we value? Sometimes our patience is measured by that. I'm going to pray now. Dave's going to lead us again as we sing and worship. How long? How long, oh Lord? How long? How long? The psalmist, that was their honest, heartfelt, vulnerable prayer. How long? God, you wanted that prayer. You wanted that psalm in your inspired word. You let it in because you know that can be our cry too. When we're confronted with challenge or pain or suffering or disappointment or doubt or loss or depression. How long, oh Lord? How long? And it's my prayer that we would pray honest, heartfelt, vulnerable prayers. Not because we're questioning your character, but because you ask us to. You invite us into that type of relationship where you can see the worst that's within me, the worst that's within any of us. But you don't turn your face away. You see that as the moments where you can most meet us with the love and the grace of Jesus. So I pray you'd meet us now. Meet us now as we're patient and we wait. And we value you. Well, there isn't words to describe how much you mean to us. Amen.